Mage deck still.
Yep, Reno Mage and Jade Druid against Control Warrior and Dude Paladin. Dude Paladin stepping up to the plate for the second time, going up against Jade Druid. Who's favored in this matchup, Cora?
In the Jade Druid versus Dude Paladin, honestly, I would say it is slightly Jade Druid favored, but it is very close. And it is very dependent upon whether or not the Druid finds Spreading Plague and Ramp early on. Those are going to be the biggest play arounds for LvGe. Obviously, then Swipe as well, and Malfurion and the Pestilent is excellent. But essentially, Jinsoo just needs to stabilize against board after board of recruits from LvGe. And if LvGe ever misses a single turn of pressure, then it's very easy for Jinsoo to capitalize on that. So it is a bit of a swingy matchup, and I do think the equalities from LvGe will be particularly important once Spreading Plague has entered the field.
So now with that Jade Behemoth draw, do you think you Wild Growth and Shapeshift one of the tokens to get you to 6 next turn? You can start dropping Jade Behemoths for taunts, or just, okay, he's going right for the Jade Spirit now.
Got to challenge the board, got to get rid of that Knife Juggler, and this is the only way that you can potentially do it. But
that is a draw right there.
Yeah, he's drawing hot fire right now. This is about as good as it gets in the early turns.
Are all 3 going to hit the Spirit? No, 1 hits face. So you can use the Light's Justice to help clear them out. And that's a very scary and stable board now for LvGe. I mean, if you're Jinsoo, you're dying for a swipe, but you pull off the top of the deck just when you need it. Next turn was going to be Coin Quartermaster GG for Jinsoo, and the swipe showed up at just the right time.
Yes, it absolutely did. And actually now we're seeing our first sort of reversal of the game. With that swipe, Jinsoo is going to have access to Jade Behemoth on turn 6th, and then the Nourish and the Wild Growth on turn 7. He may want to reserve that Nourish for card draw until he finds Ultimate Infestation, because he is running a little bit low on resources. But look at LvGe's hand. You have a coin and 2 equalities, which are unplayable at this point. And on turn 4, when Call to Arms is the best card in your deck, to not be playing Call to Arms is a tragedy. And now look, Jinsoo has picked up the Ultimate Infestation off the top, so he's going to take this full turn to ramp and go right into Ultimate Infestation next turn.
Wow! Gaining 3 mana crystals on turn 6. It's going to put, you're right, that's really tough. So now if you're LvGe, you could try to do something like Quartermaster, which he looks like he's going to coin out and then Stegadon instead. Maybe trying to get Divine Shields, trying to get attack buffs.
Yeah, just anything that he can put on additional pressure with. LvGe has seen 1 swipe already from Jinsoo, so this is the most damage possible on board. Easiest option to go with. And Jinsoo does have the Ultimate Infestation here, going to clear up one of these recruits, but LvGe still has a significant amount of pressure on this board.
Yeah. Oh, there's Call to Arms. Now, neither Knife Juggler or Call to Arms, which isn't miserable.
It's far from miserable.
It's far from miserable. And
oh, wow.
It looks like he's going to go for another recruit, though, trying to set up a big Quartermaster turn instead.
Hitting the double Dry Gulch Shaler there is really, really important for LvGe, because he was running low on resources. He didn't have anything to generate the recruits on board that he needs for that Quartermaster, for Sunkeeper Tarim, for the other Stegadon in his deck, and now he's going to have that fuel.
And the 5 cards that Jinsoo drew were not really that impressive. Nourish, double Jade Blossom, double Jade Idol. Like, you know, that's fine, but it's not the other swipe. It's not Spreading Plague. Branching Paths comes in now, so at least he can use that to armor up and buy a little more time. But those Jade Blossoms are not too great right now.
It's a lot of pressure, but pressure's not really what Jinsoo needs right now. He's not in the clear. The board is still very threatening from LvGe, and Jinsoo needs reactive cards as opposed to proactive cards, which is all he really drew here. So he just has to do, you know, what his hand texture is telling him to do, and that's to develop his own strong board state. But now you have to be really, really worried about an equality coming through and all of the damage, or a Sunkeeper Tarim in particular.
Might not even
that would have
need
actually
equality,
just been 1 damage off lethal this turn.
I think if I'm LvGe, I might just hold the equalities, because you can use Rallying Blade and buff up, and just like the Mini-Bot and the Rallying Blade take out the Jade Behemoth, and then at that point you can just kind of, you know, just shimmy around on board if you want. Maybe the equality is the right play here, but I think you want to save at least 1 equality for a Knife Juggler equality with all the Silverhand recruits that are going to be in your hand to clear out the board of the 5/5, 6/6, 7/7 Jades that are coming after.
Well, maybe even more importantly is that Spreading Plague turn. LvGe knows the later in the game he goes, if Jinsoo doesn't already have that Spreading Plague, he is going to find it. So LvGe's board is pretty much always going to be rather weak, and that equality is going to be the only play around that he has for it. If it gets to the point where Jinsoo has, you know, really big Jades on the board, either Jinsoo's won the game or Jinsoo's lost the game, and equality likely won't make that much of a difference.
And very quick play there as the timer runs out, manages to get all of his damage in.
Okay, this is fine. So you're protecting your Anoyotron a little bit. Still more than threatening lethal for next turn. Does Jinsoo find the Spreading Plague? He does.
And if he didn't, he still had Branching Paths to try to rip 2 cards off the deck to dig a little bit deeper if needed.
Or just to armor for 12.
Yeah, but I think if you armor for 12, you're asking to get killed because things like Quartermaster and stuff can give you a little bit more reach. I definitely think the Spreading Plague is what he needs to stay alive, especially because now he can trade into the Anoyotron, knocking off the Divine Shield, and then gets 5 spiders, which is pretty gross.
This has got to be the Spreading Plague turn. You can Spreading Plague and Jade Blossom and Jade Idol, or you can Spreading Plague and Branching Paths. There may be even some reasoning for Poison Seed Spreading Plague just to prevent the buffs onto the dudes, but it seems a little bit too liberal there.
Because it's like if you Jade Blossom and Jade Idol and then they have equality, which is what you're worried about, you've lost for the most part. You know what I mean? So I like the idea of Branching Paths to get back up to 17 health.
Well, I think you're going to gain 6 armor, and you might even buff your Scarabs by 1 attack.
Okay.
Just to ensure that the Minibot and the Anoyotron run over and get killed off. But now Jinsoo is going to take the very safe route here, and you certainly can't blame him for just wanting to stabilize that health total.
Looking like he's not going to equality. Going to save it. Maybe play some Silverhand recruits with Quartermasters and try to just put a bunch of 3/3s on the board and just clear them out the old-fashioned way. Maybe he wants his opponent to think that he doesn't have the other equality so he can set his opponent up for something bigger.
This could definitely be a bait for second Spreading Plague if LvGe thinks that Jinsoo has it. Because if LvGe plays equality here and goes big on board and there is second Spreading Plague for Jinsoo, then LvGe could really struggle to deal with that second board. So instead, holding that equality for when he absolutely needs it, because right now he certainly doesn't. I mean, look at this board disparity between the pressure that LvGe has and how little Jinsoo is actually holding on to in relevant minion
Another
pressure
angle
on board.
Is if a second Spreading Plague comes out and you can get your second Quartermaster out, you have a bunch of 5/5s.
Exactly.
And the 5/5s just fight the spiders regular style.
Regular style as opposed to street style?
Yeah, strong style.
Okay, yeah.
You're a wrestling fan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some Japanese strong style in here. This board, though, this is if you're a dude paladin, you dream of boards like this. It's hard to imagine having a bunch of buffed up Silverhand recruits and not closing the game out.
And this really is a direct result of that call to arms into double Dragulch Jailer, because LvGe's opening hand was quite bad after the swipe from Jinsoo. He had 2 copies of Equality, a Knife Juggler, and a Quartermaster with a coin. And there's not much you can put together from that hand. It's just a little bit too ragtag, unfortunately. But then you pick up the Call to Arms, 2 Dragulch Jailers, and suddenly you unlock all of that dude synergy that you have in your deck, and your top decks become that much stronger. So 6 damage on board for LvGe after he runs into that Jade Behemoth. If Equality comes out, then it is 10 damage.
And that does put him pretty close, especially if you decide to Equality and then trade with the Jade Behemoth, but then Knife Juggler with some other recruits.
Yeah, that's really tempting, but again, if LvGe held on to the Equality,
he's waiting
even after that first Spreading Plague, he's holding on to it for something very specific, and I don't think that this is enough pressure for him to use it this turn.
We've already seen 2 Jade Behemoths too, and 1 Spreading Plague, and Swipe is not particularly great now. So it's one of those things where there might not be that many live draws left in Jinsoo's deck, and LvGe's doing the math on it, just going all right, I'll put you down to, under 15 and let you sort of figure this out.
There is 1 more Swipe, there's 1 more Spreading Plague, 1 more Branching Paths. All would be pretty reasonable draws here, but Jinsoo instead picking up that unbuffed Jasper Spellstone, and yeah, looking like he just needs to play Ultimate Infestation this turn and start finding those defensive pieces. Now this is going to be 3, 5, 7, 9 damage on board for LvGe, and Jinsoo at 18, feeling relatively secure here, and with a full hand of resources, he can just do so much more in the upcoming turns.
And this 5 cards was much more impactful than the last 5 cards. I mean, Aya, Swipe, Poison Seeds, Malfurion, and Jasper Spellstone are a lot of anti-aggro tools that Jinsoo can use just to stabilize, stay alive. You can feel like he's almost turned the corner, right? There's no more call to arms. There's no more like huge dude turns coming out. So if Jinsoo, I think, senses what we all sense, which is just, if I can hold on a little bit longer, he's just going to run out of gas, and then I can just Jade Idol my way to victory.
Yeah, this is exactly what Jinsoo was hoping for. That Malfurion, the Pestilent, going to make it that much easier for him to stabilize later on with the upgraded hero power. And then just look at the amount of counter pressure he has right now with Aya, the Jade Blossom, and the Jade Idol. He does still need to be very wary, as LvGe here has hit Wind Fury onto his dudes. Those can be easily buffed, although I think the only buff card remaining in deck is actually Sunkeeper Tarim.
We've seen both Quartermasters and both Stegodons, so I think you're right.
Yeah, but this is a problem that Swipe can easily solve.
Yep, no level up. That was earlier.
No, when you have Quartermaster, level up just seems
doesn't seem so good.
Pretty weak in comparison.
Yeah. Well, only 4 power left. The Knife Juggler equality combo sitting in hand without much else to use it on. Jinsoo's insane amount of defense seems to have carried the day, as he is holding a huge hand of defensive tools and Jades.
He has just about gotten there, and this was after a very, very strong mid-game from LvGe. That Lotheb could have very easily changed the course of this game. If he'd had a board state and was able to drop down Lotheb and prevent Jinsoo from interacting with it for a turn, LvGe very easily could have simply ended the game, but Jinsoo had the necessary defensive resources. He had the necessary ramp, and this is really why you can see this matchup is actually very difficult for the Paladin. They just need to do everything perfectly well, and Jinsoo and the Jade Druid need to do everything pretty decently, and Spreading Plague and Swipe can carry him all the way home.
LvGe doing the math, thinking about it, but I don't really see a way for him out of this because, of course, there's no reach in a Paladin deck. There's no, fireballs, just knock people out. It doesn't have any charge minions. Yeah, so it's basically his line to victory is what? Playing Equality, Knife Juggler, Lotheb, cross your fingers? Like, I don't know. It's pretty brutal.
LvGe holding on to that Knife Juggler to use in combination with...
He's got another muster,
probably that second muster for battle, yeah. But this is just a lot of damage, and with plus 6 damage onto the board, that is going to be lethal. So Jinsoo going to wrap up game number 3, going to a 2-1 lead here. LvGe still struggling a little bit with this Paladin deck. We've seen it falling off in the standard format as well because it's just, not running into the matchups that it needs. Not strong enough against Q Block. Jade Druid is a killer against aggressive decks, even though